Coming to you from UBN Studios in Burbank, California. You're listening to the Unsugar-Coated Podcast with your hosts, Ali Alanias and Alexandra Checa.
Alia, we're bringing you the party today, man. We're getting it going.
Who's ready to party?
Happy Tuesday. If you're listening to this, it's Tuesday. I hope it's a fabulous Tuesday. I hope your Monday was rocking.
Taco Tuesday.
And Tuesday is rolling. So I'm Alia.
And this is Alexandra.
And we are here to give you a bit of empowerment today. We have like some really cool stuff.
Your daily dose of empowerment.
Yeah, for sure. How has your week been?
It's good. It's good. However, for all of my UCLA people, I know that today the Westboro Baptist Church is going to be in campus. And I just want to say that I'm sorry that these things still exist in our world today.
Yeah, you know, I actually spent some time watching a really cool, they had it on, I kind of binge watched a little bit. I got to go back and watch the rest, but I watched a couple episodes of the docuseries Hate Thy Neighbor on Vice Channel. And I'm always a little interesting. I love Vice Channel. I mean, I love some of the stuff, but this particular docuseries is incredible. It's funny, I by my standards at least. And I say that because it's provocative. It makes you think. It shows you things. Some people that like myself already know. So Hate Thy Neighbor, it's based around a comedian, Jamali Maddox, and he's a UK British comedian. He's half white and half black. Okay. And I have to say, I'm going to give like one scene to just kind of give why I love this docuseries so much, because he goes in between these experiences that he has. And then he goes back where you see him in a club talking to an audience and kind of just making light humor or, you know, political humor about his experiences. So you as the audience in the TV world, you're seeing both.
Right.
And it's funny. And man, so he has this beard where he looks like he's Muslim. He looks like he's Muslim.
Okay.
And in one of the series that I saw, the episodes I saw, he had gone to an anti-Islamic protest in the UK, in London.
Oh, my God.
So it's hilarious because he's standing there and he's just talking with some guys, just standing there. And then this white guy comes up and he's like, you have to admit there's these things. And he starts telling him, you got to admit Islam has this. You know it. And he's like, and you can just see it. It's like, I'm not Muslim.
You're right.
I don't have to admit anything, first of all. Thanks for, But what was even more incredible was that this guy, and I so appreciate this moment. I so appreciate it. He looked at him and he goes, oh, well, that was my blinders on. And I'm like, exactly, dude. That was your blinders on. And you could see that he didn't know how to react in for a quick second because he realized, I just presumed this person was Muslim.
Right.
And he's not.
Because of a beard.
Right. And what's so extremely important and relevant to that and what goes into the whole entire series is that you see a lot of people with these extremist beliefs, especially when it comes to racism and stereotyping, anti-Islamist belief and all that, is that one of their biggest issues is, I can't tell who you are anymore. We should be able to tell who each other are. Like the fact that I'm half white. Mm-hmm. And when I say that to somebody, they're like, because they can't see it, that confuses them. They want to be able to identify who I am. And when they can't, that gives them they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to react with that. And so in this series, it was just really, so when you talk about the Westboro showing up on UCLA, we're just still talking about how we hate people.
Right.
For reasons that are really not valid.
My problem with this is that they are hiding behind religion. Like Jesus said this, right? And it makes me think about this, and I don't think I've ever asked you this, but how do you feel about people, because you're Muslim,
right?
So how do you feel about people, these leaders that have taken their religion and made it into something completely different than it is, and for you to sit here and say, no, being a Muslim, it doesn't mean all these horrible things that people say that it is. Because that's what Westboro is saying, Jesus basically hates all gay people.
Right.
No, he doesn't.
Right.
Right.
Jesus loved everybody.
Jesus loved everybody. He was incredibly rebellious, if you really think about it. So for you, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with people hiding behind religion of Islam and to justify all the things that they're doing.
I mean, it makes me feel unseen. It makes me do what I do, not only what we're doing here with the podcast. And, and I come from a conservative background, so like very conservative. And when people say those things, it's what caused me to go write a book and like show that in the book, the Muslim family are like bopping to, Drake in the car and stuff, because it's like you're fighting to show I am a human being and I'm a person and I'm so much more than that little box you're putting me in. And you completely do not have this figured out. And I love religion. I hold a degree in biblical studies. I went to a Christian church. I used to knock on doors. Do you know as a teenager, I used to go and knock on people's doors, invite them to church. And I even had some people give their life to God right there on their doorstep. I was a kid. Yeah. You got to think about the words that I must have been able to share to get someone to come to that point.
Also the passion that I'm sure it went through.
But you know what I didn't do? I never walked up to somebody and said, well, your religion is wrong.
Right.
You're this, you're that. I never took that approach because I believe that is fundamentally wrong and the most wrong direction to try and get someone to hear whatever it is that you're trying to share, right? So
absolutely,
when I became a Muslim in my 20s, it was for beautiful things within the religion, and so I think when we talk about the LGBTQ community. I think it's not so much about people doing the whole, this is wrong, this is right. Why don't you just sit down and take the time to get to know each other or because look, I've been confronted with the idea of what if one of my children comes home and says they're gay? Mm-hmm. What choice am I going to make? Well, you know what, Alexandra, all I can tell you is that I would love my child. I would never turn my back on them. I might not understand certain things, and I don't like when people say that's a wrong thing to say. That's not fair. It's not about that. I'm telling you, I would accept and love my child. Might I have some mental barriers or assumptions to overcome in that process? Sure, but I would never turn my back on my kids. So that's something that I think a lot of people are afraid of. Because what I see a problem with the older generation today is that they feel that all the kids that are growing up now. You go into elementary schools now and, the LGBT community is being told to be embraced.
Right.
And in my generation, that wasn't. It was the exact opposite, right? So you have a generation of older people right now who think that the kids growing up right now, they're not going to understand that that's wrong. Right? Yeah. They're going to feel that it's normal. They're worried that the heterosexual kids are going to start to feel like, should I be gay because everyone else is? But that's not actually what happens. That's not what happens. So, you're a very passionate young woman. I've been passionate for a long time too. And I really just want to have those conversations that bring people together. And have a better understanding.
Yeah, but it's crazy because I feel like people don't want to have the conversation. They want to hold on to their beliefs so tightly, maybe because that's where their whole identity is. I'm not sure. Yeah. But I mean, things like, Hey Thy Neighbor, I think they shed a lot of light and they help you realize many things. That's
exactly. It's such a good documentary. I mean, it's worth checking it out. And some of the episodes, I definitely loved it.
I feel like comedy documentaries that are trying to shed light on an actual issue that implement comedy do so much better than just documentaries.
Right.
Where it's just a bunch of facts.
Right. Or people being that they're being either preached at or that somebody has configured this to make you think a certain way, right? Mm-hmm. Like when you see a documentary on a murderer and then after you learn he had a crappy life, then suddenly you feel sorry for him. But I mean, it's like, So anyway, that's all. So the power of the mind, it's a perfect segue into our amazing guest today. I'm super excited and I cannot wait to get going because she's just such as you said, she's kind of a big deal, but I've got to preface this. She's a big deal because she's also my friend. So Kimberly Spencer is an award-winning high-performance coach and trainer, Amazon best-selling co-author, and the founder of CrownYourself.com, helping high achievers build their empire. An award-winning screenwriter and 6-time WeGo Health Activist Award nominee, Kimberly is proof that it's better to make your own mold than to conform to someone else's. Her 10-year track record in sales and entrepreneurship was recently featured in the Amazon bestseller book, The Start Journey to Entrepreneurship. She's been featured on the CW, ESPN, NPR, and in Forbes. Her premier solo book, Mindful Meals, How to Dethrone Food Fears and Reign in a Body of the Rules, debuts in June 2020. We're not going to talk about it anymore. We're so happy to welcome her. Everybody, Kimberly Spencer.
Hi! I love the applause. That is awesome.
You deserve it. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to share this space with you.
Well, like I told you, I had an audience member who said, listen, if you don't mind, can you do an episode on moms who lose their shit? And I was like, there's nobody. No, I know who I'm calling up for that one.
Yep.
So thank you, because we really want to lay down some education for our friends.
Well, I'm really dying to hear this conversation because I don't have any kids, so you guys can give me all the good stuff.
Soak it up.
Yeah.
Soak it up. Get ready.
Because especially when you're in business, like specifically we're businesswomen. So please tell our audience a little bit, like you live in LA, share a little bit about your journey here.
So I have been an entrepreneur for the past 10 years, and I had an e-commerce company. I had a private Pilates studio in LA, and I have my Crown Yourself coaching company that is my digital company. And Crown Yourself took a little while for me to get off the ground from idea to actually putting it into action and having it be a business, simply because when I was bought out of my e-commerce company back in 2014, I was like, now what do I do? And so I was on my honeymoon because I was bought out 3 weeks before I got married.
Nice.
So it was the whole 3 months like leading up to the wedding, when you're supposed to be planning napkins and eating cake. I was like dealing with lawyers and legal negotiations. So that was the challenge. And so I came up with the idea for Crown Yourself, which really was the amalgamation of like everything that I have loved. I loved coaching in the realm of teaching Pilates. I love shifting people's stories back from when I was a screenwriter and seeing what stories can do for transforming people's lives, fiction and nonfiction. I loved, body image and health and relationships and business. And so I was like, well, Spike, my husband is like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, Crown Yourself. He's like, what's that? I was like, I don't know. And so I started with a blog, and I wasn't quite sure what to do. But that buyout was the first time that I'd ever had anything that really crushed me with doubt. Because I had a lot of legal issues on no man, on no woman, because it was, I had the first time where I had my integrity called into check. I had my reputation called into check, and I'd never experienced that. And that was so challenging for me to go through that. In the past, I used to be this audacious, like, oh, you want me to do it? Oh, done. Like, I'll write a screenplay. Sure. Did it in 2 weeks. Got it into the producer. He's like, how do you understand men so well? I was like, well, I've dated. But I used to be super boisterous with my asks. And I came up with the idea for Crown Yourself, and I started the blog, but I really didn't turn pro until I found out that I was pregnant. And that year and a half of doubt and delay and procrastination and lots of busy work. Like, I think back, I was on the computer all the time, but I don't know what I was doing. Like, I really look back, I'm like, what the fuck was I doing? Like, how was I working all the time, and yet I was making no profit in it? And then I got pregnant. And then I was like, I did not like the woman who I had become. I was complaining. I was still blaming other people for my problems. And I knew that was not the woman that I wanted to be the mother of my son. Because while the title of CEO didn't really scare me, it scared me enough. The title of mom was the title that I needed, that I was not going to allow my son to grow up with a crappy mother. Like, that was just not going to happen.
You're like, none of that.
I was done. And so within 2 weeks, I was driving to Vegas. I was getting certified in NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnosis, diving deep into the subconscious patterns, had massive breakthroughs, came home, took my Crown Yourself from making $100 a month to $2,000 a month, and then it's been up from there. So, and it's been awesome because I took my business entirely digital in 2018. We've been able to travel. We went to Australia for a month. We're going to Australia again for a month in March, and it's just been so fun to be able to grow my business and my baby. And I say I'm raising twins because they're both in the toddler phase, and toddlers, like, they both have momentum, but they also crash. They also get injured and bruised.
That's such an amazing illustration, metaphor. I agree. It's funny whenever I've written my books, it's like I always tell people it's like having a baby. Yeah. You're little, and then you get it, and you're like, oh, and then you share it with the world, and you hope that people don't say, you got an ugly baby. No,
Though sometimes it's like when my son came out, I was like, He's cute.
He is
He looks
adorable.
like an alien,
Declan
though,
is-
for like the first 2 months. Like he looked like a little Benjamin Button.
This is so refreshing because I have not met any mother who has had the honesty to accept that the baby does not look cute in the first.
He looked cute,
days.
No, I know what you
but
mean.
it
to,
was like,
say,
and
I
he
know.
had his tongue sticking out, and one of his eyes was kind of like off just a little bit. But it just he was
cute.
He was cute.
But he was cute.
But he looked like Benjamin Button for like a month,
Yeah.
and yeah, it
Because
just
Benjamin Button
he-
grew up to be
he's-
really hot.
and I see him now. I'm like, dude, he just got his first haircut. I'm like, I saw glimpses of him as a teenager. I was like, oh crap, I'm gonna like,
yeah.
you are gonna have no problem with the ladies.
Yeah, you better. Yeah. So, okay, I have to say, you and I came into contact. You reached out to me when I held EmpowerCon. You presented yourself as a speaker. I did my research, and I was like, you're amazing. I think I said earlier when you came on, you said she's kind of a big deal. And
is.
what's I agree with you, but what I want the audience to know is the reason why I think she's such a freaking big deal is because she's not out there just hustling for herself. This is a true woman supporter. She came back. She would recommend exhibitors. I mean, like half the exhibitors at EmpowerCon. I'm not even going to bullshit you. She's the one who got this. She referred them. She was like, yeah. And she still to this day connects me with people that she feels there's some sort of a possibility of a collaboration or just people we need to know. And that's what makes her such a big deal to me because she genuinely isn't just growing herself, but she's growing other people. And I love you for that. So when we talk about EmpowerCon, you came to EmpowerCon, and for our visual audience, you're going to crack up because we have a picture. There's one cute picture. That's her, me, our host, Philip Andrew Barb, who has also been a guest on our show. And then the second one's a beautiful picture of us, right? Well, it's so cute. We're done. We're basking in our glow. The next picture is Declan, her son, on the ground. On the ground. Full on, like, no, I'm not getting up and taking a picture with you guys.
He was exhausted. Like I think I came on like right at his nap time, and he stayed up until like 4. And like, I mean, he was pushing it, and then he totally crashed in the car on the way home.
Right.
Totally crashed.
But I love that you brought him
Yeah.
because you know what? As a mom, you should be able to. Like, there's things that I have, and I want my kids to see it. Right? Even at that small age, my mommy's up on a stage. My mommy is speaking to people and people are listening. And of course, you fine tune what you say. How does that play into you being like, how much does being an entrepreneurship now, being an entrepreneur now, as you said a second ago, play into being a mom? Like, you know,
It's everything. Like I say that both owning your own business and being a mom is like personal development on steroids. And combine them times 2, you're like the Hulk. So it's a crazy experience, and that having him there and having my mom there also, because she was watching him, having my mom there and hear me share my story publicly about, you know, things I went through as a child. And my dad was an addict, and she's very aware. And my dad, both she and my parents are very supportive of me sharing that part of our story and my truth and what I experienced growing up. And both of them, like, but having her there and to see it, because she's been to like every show, every performance, everything. She was always such a gigantic cheerleader, and my dad too, in a different way. But my dad was in rehab, which is why he couldn't be there. But he's luckily a few months sober. But that having both my son and my mom there was so powerful for me, because I want my son to know that I'm doing it, yes, for me. I'm doing it, yes, for the people that I serve. I'm also doing it for him. Like, because being a business owner makes me a better mom.
right.
And being a mom makes me a better business owner.
Right.
I tell my clients all the time, like, I've worked with some extraordinary coaches to help me get to where I am today.
Sure.
And at the same time, my son has been my greatest coach, because he is my little mirror. Like, when I saw at 6 months old, I saw how he was processing shame. And I recognized it immediately, because that was how I process shame. I immediately went into just like beating myself up to the point like where he was physically beating himself up. And he didn't know how to express the emotions, and he was getting frustrated with himself. And I was like, oh, crap, that's how I deal with it.
Yep.
And And what was great, though, is that it provided me with such a mirror for learning and for changing. Because if I change, then he can change. And I see what he has that I needed to bring to the surface was his level of compassion and love that he has for humans has been since he was in utero. I would be on a breakthrough call with a client who was going through like a massive struggle, and I would feel him punching me from the inside.
Wow.
Like, Mama, I want to help. Like, Mom, and it was the most powerful feeling. Like, he wanted to help. And it's so sweet because now every time he hears an ambulance, he's like, help people. I help people. But it's like both being an entrepreneur and being a mom, they are mirrors for where you are in your life.
Yeah.
They are mirrors for your own growth. I had one of my mentors who was doing timeline therapy with a CEO and who had I think he had 500 employees. And he always asks at some point in the process, like, why are you choosing to do like the deep subconscious work to really unpack and like topple down as I call it, the emotional Jenga sets of the negative emotions that you have? And he said, the CEO said, I am responsible for 500 families, and the decisions that I make ripple into them having food on their tables.
Absolutely.
I will do everything I can in my power to get anything that is limiting me from helping them provide for a better family, for a better way of life. And that story has blown me away. And it's why I continue to do the work that I do. And it's why I continue to jump on any podcast who will have me. And it's why I continue to spread the message. It's why I jump on stages. And it's why, sometimes I'll leave my son for a couple of days to be able to do that so that other people can do that work as well.
Sure. And it's two things I have to say to that. One, it's funny how being a mom, it took me 4 kids, though. You're so lucky you got it on the first one. I'm a little bit jealous, okay? Because I was just like, my first one, I'm like, okay, just keep her alive. Okay, that was my goal. But by the 4th one, I had figured out that Itsy Bitsy Spider was a freaking metaphor for life. Itsy Bitsy Spider, goes up the water spout, down comes the rain, and washes the spider out. Out comes the sun and dries up all the rain, and the Itsy Bitsy Spider goes up the spout again. I'm singing it to her, and I'm like, oh. Exactly like you. And I love how being a mother can teach you a lot if you're open to it.
If you're open to learning.
And it's interesting because even when you talk about being, the people putting food on the plates of more than one other. I mean, as a business owner and my former business with Metro PCS as a dealer, we were one of the top dealers in LA County consistently, and we had all these employees in all these locations, and I would have employees that would steal from me because they would not understand that I didn't just have one roof to put over someone's head. I'm trying to keep all of you guys keeping your families intact as well and give you incentives. And when we talk about the success of a business, it's funny, I've moved more into, I was at the City Gala event, as I had mentioned last night. I know you've been there, your husband's spoken there and presented, and such an amazing thing. And someone said, social entrepreneurship is so important because I consider myself more a social entrepreneur now. And it's it's the best of both worlds because you're getting to take what we've learned in business and what's successful, but then also apply it to people in the charity world and the people who need it, the underserved populations, and help them. Because you will end up wasting more time, don't you think, if you don't do it right? Because there is a trick to being an entrepreneur.
Oh yeah. there is a trick and a belief system that will move mountains rather than the scarcity that a lot of people think entrepreneurship. Because I think entrepreneurship, especially in the 80s and early 90s, got a bad rap for being this cutthroat thing and it's all about selling and all that. Right. And I'm like, actually, what I've found is the more that's why I put people in touch with anyone. I call them karmic connections. Yes. And it's even biblical, give and you shall receive. That's it. So I give. And that beyond anything else has done more for my business in the past 2 years than anything else.
Yep. Amen.
And it's because I love that spirit of giving. I mean, I was just at Tony Robbins' Business Mastery in Florida, and I was in a room where in the span, the most powerful, one of the top 5 probably most powerful experiences of my life was standing in a room with about 2,000 entrepreneurs. And Tony was asking us about, he was sharing that some of the portions go to Operation Underground Railroad, which has trained CIA, FBI, Homeland Security, former operatives to go into the places where children are taken and being sold as slaves, and they go in and actually rescue them. They're the only charity that actually goes in and rescues them. Right. And within the span of half an hour from us watching a video to Tony asking if you'd like to donate more, please just make your way to the boxes in the aisle. The room parted like the Red Sea. Wow. And it was the most overwhelming and powerful experience of seeing this wave of just love. We ended up raising $1 million with what Tony matched.
Wow.
In the span of 30 minutes.
Wow.
And that's why I think, especially when you become an entrepreneur, a lot of the money mindset stuff comes into play. Of what you believe you deserve, what you believe you're worth, if you believe you're enough, and that's all ego talking. Mm-hmm. It's not about you. Yep. It's about what money can do for others. Mm-hmm. It's about the more money that you make, and this is why one of my soul missions is soul, as in SOLE, at bottom of your shoe sole, and soul is in soul is in my heart, is to have more good-hearted, purpose-driven, mission-minded leaders making more money. Because if I can help you do that, you will give more. And I think entrepreneurs can be the new heroes. We can be the new superheroes, leading and lighting the way for what is possible, whether it's being an entrepreneur in a nonprofit or whether that's being an entrepreneur in a for-profit business and part of your proceeds go to charity or you donate a portion of your time. And that is so powerful for me. And the money mindset constantly comes into play along with the ego of where are you doing that dance of making it about you rather than making it about the people that you serve? Because when you fall in love with your customer, when you fall in love with serving as a parent, when you fall in love with serving the people that you are blessed with their dollar, that in itself will change your business.
Yeah. But really quick, I love that. That's so true. There's actually no but on that. Sorry, I didn't mean to say it. I really love that. I really want to just ask because you're so well put together, and I know you are. But to fully satisfy, you got to have bad days.
Oh yeah.
And that's the thing I want people to know. We have bad days. How do you process a bad day?
Recently, I was in my my membership community, my Revolutionary Empire Builders, and I literally live streamed the training from my bed. I was so exhausted. I had spent the past month burning a wee bit of the candle at both ends. And I said, guys, I want to show you what giving 100% of the 30% you have to give looks like. Right. I said, I'm going to teach you this topic. I totally forget what it was on, but it was on branding or marketing or sales strategy. But I said, I'm going to teach you this from my bed because this is right now, my energy and my health has me in bed at this moment. Sure. And I was so exhausted. And I had so many of my members thanking me for showing up authentically and saying hey, I'm human. And I was not honoring my body with enough rest. I was not honoring my body with enough sleep. I made a mistake. Okay, I'm still going to give you 100% of the 30% that I have for today.
That's so true. Because that's sometimes what it boils down to. And as our kids get older, too, those days that come where you're like, oh, man, this is just so stressful. Yeah. And, as an entrepreneur, so you work 7 days a week as an entrepreneur, right? Would you?
Ideally, you sleep.
Yeah, well, ideally you sleep. Yeah, but when you wake up, there's still emails. Like the work goes on 24 hours a day is what I mean to say. And if you're truly, you just know if you're dealing with different time zones and people send you stuff. I'm not saying I answer those emails in the middle of the night.
Yes, I used to. I stopped doing. I did that in my e-commerce business, and that's actually how I started losing my hair. Because I was so stressed out. I was answering customer service requests at 3, 4 a.m. I would wake up in a panic. And my husband, my fiance at the time, who is my husband, he was like, this is not healthy for you. Right. This is not a healthy pattern. So actually being bought out of that company was one of the biggest blessings that I could have because now I've set my own rules.
Right.
And I tell my team, I'm like, we're putting health first. So if you're not getting enough rest, get 7 hours of rest, and then we can chat about whatever tasks it is that you need to do. But health is such a priority because without that, you don't have any legs to stand on. I mean, as a cancer survivor, I mean, that when you lose your health, it totally wrecks any progress in anywhere area. It's so hard to serve from a place when you are struggling with your health.
Yeah. And you've talked, so we'll get into that because we're really excited to talk to you about the mind reprogramming.
Yeah.
So when we talk about being moms and losing it, yes, we have it. It's normal. We feel guilty sometimes because we don't get enough done. But one thing I am actually thankful for is I work a lot, right? But one thing I love about being a business owner is that I take those couple days where I go somewhere, but I also spend a lot of time with my kids. I'm there when they get home from school. I pick them up quite often. I mean, there's just so much that I'm able to do that it's always been able to be a balance for me. And to some degree, it's like if you can work this right, it's great because, you're not the mom who feels guilty because you're missing their first step when they're at daycare or you're missing their first, word, because those things happen to moms too. They think it only happens to dads, but it happens to moms too. I did actually have a statistic here that I seem to have lost, but it is actually just like, look, in this, this isn't going to be a strange concept, but in most households today, both parents have to work. Largely 60% and above of American working families, there is 2 parents or more working.
Especially if you live in LA.
Well, anywhere where there's a high cost of living is out of control. New York, San Francisco. I mean, and now it's reaching out to suburban areas. I mean, that's a whole nother episode, by the way, on the cost of living and homelessness. And I drove down to pick up my son from Amtrak yesterday, and I took pictures of the camps. Like, people hear about this. People outside of LA, yes, these encampments are real. But what they don't understand is these are families who cannot afford to find housing. So there's a big distinction between the drug addict and I say this because when we talk about because everyone's trying to be an entrepreneur, but technically the Uber driver is an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
right.
But we want to help people be successful and not have to be put in those circumstances.
When you said both parents have to work, it just brought me back to like my parents both had to work too, and I'm just so glad that the internet can make you money because my mother would be in there all the time. Wow, that was kind of sad. Anyways, so
both my parents work too.
Yeah,
but I grew up with watching my parents grow a business together, and seeing my mom work from being the receptionist at their like little in-home office to it's still being an in-home office, but her becoming like the VP of their company and working together side by side. And so like I was being raised with those values of resilience, and that if you don't have work coming in for the next month, you got to go find it.
Yeah,
you got to go hustle. What was it that you said to me? It was on our first call that we ever had, and it was about hustle, and it was about putting something on the table.
Oh, I said closed mouth don't get fed.
Yep.
That's my thing.
I was
My
just
husband
like,
yep. Like, I loved it because she's like, oh, and I'm like, hey, I respect that you reached out. Closed mouth don't get fed. The worst that I could say is no. And that actually, number one in entrepreneur training 101, do not be afraid to hear the word no.
In fact,
because
love
you're
it.
Gonna hear it. Exactly. Love it.
Love
They're gonna
it.
be like, oh, okay. Oh, so what you're saying is no, not right now, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. Okay.
Not right
That's
now?
what you're
Okay,
saying.
okay. I'll come back in a few months.
Yeah. And if not, a few months after that, one day, it's going to be
One
a
day.
yes. It sound like a stocking.
little bit.
But no, I mean, I got a little flip. I know we need to get to the brain reprogramming, but I will say this. I kind of grew up with different. My mom worked. My mom was an entrepreneur. But you know what? She used it as an escape from being a mom because she didn't really want to be. I shouldn't speak for her, but I just can say in a lot of the things that happened in my life, it was because she didn't really want to have to take the active role of being responsible. And but she admits that. Like recently we had a conversation and she's like, I didn't know. I was a young mom. I didn't know. So anyways, like but I'm thankful for being able to see a business-minded person. And I feel sad that her life didn't work out the way that it should have as a result of that. But yeah, I mean, it's great that you take it and you do. Anybody, if you do want to be coached on a business or you want to learn how to, you please reach out to Kimberly Spencer, crownyourself.com for real, because she will help you out. And I mean that genuinely because you've been such a valuable friend to me. Like you're now on the committee team for EmpowerCon. We're meeting Wednesday to go back down to LA Convention Center and scope it out and see, but you are a tremendous, asset to others as well as your family. So I've got to say, before I hand this over to her on the brain reprogramming, she's so excited.
I can't
was
contain
told
myself.
somebody something recently, and it was very interesting. A boxer in the ring is focused on nothing but not getting hit in the face in that moment. And I thought that was really profound because brain power, let's talk about that.
Oh, and if you think an athlete, when they get into their head, they're dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you're thinking about, well, how do I do this? No, it has to become instinctual, and it's a process. It's a learning process. But that is when you're in your head thinking about how do I maybe do this punch or do the swing, you won't have it. It's not in your body yet. It's not fully in your cells.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So brain reprogramming.
Thank you for that.
As she takes a sip of water. Yes,
I'm
now
just
it's your time
sipping
to
water. So when I found out that we're gonna be interviewing you, I went and stalked you on all social
I really
forums.
appreciated it.
And I stalked you really hard because I went and commented and went 135 weeks before. So
That's deep. When you go 135
deep.
weeks.
That's weeks.
It's like I've been on Instagram that long.
But on your Crown Yourself Instagram, on that page, I saw a picture. I saw a quote that really, really hit me, and it said, "Subconscious programming is 95 to 97% of all that you do," which means that 3%, I'm guessing, is
Willpower.
So I want to talk about habits. So according to The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, an incredible book,
Great book.
when a habit emerges, the brain stops fully participating in decision making. So unless you deliberately fight a habit, unless you find new routines, the pattern will unfold automatically. Which made me think personally, how many times do I stop and examine my habits? How many times do I actually see, is this habit good for me or not? Mm-hmm. And I am now understanding that that's where all of my confusion and where all my stress is coming from, because I'm trying to change something, but nothing is changing.
It's going into changing the habit rather than in the belief that's backing that habit. So every habit has been instilled from thoughts and feelings and behavior. And eventually, by the time it becomes a habit, and it can be a habit is anything. I think a lot of people, or at least I did for the longest time, I perceived habits to be like a morning routine, right? Mm-hmm. Like you work out, you journal, you have those habits. Habits can also be the way that you talk about yourself.
Right.
Habits can also be the way that you talk about others. Habits can also be what you focus on, because what you focus on, you feed, and that's a continuous habit. Mm-hmm. It's a habit of feeding that. So looking at the habits, you're looking at the doing or the having of whatever it is, but you're not looking at how you're being. Mm-hmm. And the being is defined by the beliefs. What have you made this habit or thing have significance in your life? What makes that thing have significance? When you can break that down as to the meaning that you have given it. So for example, let's take the habit of sometimes some people have a nasty habit of gossiping. Mm-hmm. And they like to jump into conversations and they end up gossiping or sharing about, somebody or so-and-so did this to me, and did you know this? Well, the belief that more often I've seen comes from that habit, or is the seed, the root of that habit, is the belief of connection. Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the reward.
Yeah, because every belief, every limiting belief, every positive belief, every belief has three roots in what I call the Trojan horses: in safety, in control, and in acknowledgement or connection. Okay. So it gives you acknowledgement or connection to gossip. Yes, it's negative, but it also gives you some feeling, some perception of that you have control over your situation. Some perception that if you can control these people's opinions of Sally, then that means that you're in the right. That means that you're in a good person. Not necessarily. But that comes down to looking at the habit, looking at the beliefs that are backing the habits. So when clients start to work with me, we look at questioning everything, questioning the habit of maybe them undercharging or undervaluing their services, of looking at what are the beliefs that are backing that habit of why is it when a client comes to me and they're not making, more than $2,000 a month in their business, I'm like, okay, well, let's look at this. What are you charging for your services? And it turns out to be like a $100 one-off session. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, we can structure the packages and whatnot of what you're going to do. But on a belief basis, that's what's more important, because you can fix the habit kind of, but if you're doing it from the place of brute willpower and of just conscious reason, it's going to combat, because their beliefs will always crush habits every day. If you have a belief that you don't deserve it, that you're not worthy of it, or that you're not enough, that will permeate every single habit that you have.
Yeah.
That makes sense, because also according to the same book, to overpower a habit, we must recognize which craving is driving the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But that is the challenge, I think, for some people. Even for myself, you don't want to admit what the craving is.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
well, it's because then you're passing judgment on yourself, or you believe you're passing judgment. But I look at the craving from the perspective of, because when I learned this, before I learned this as a test subject on my own self from reprogramming my mindset from being a bulimic.
mm-hmm.
And I had to look at myself whenever I would slip up, when I was like trying to reverse the habit of throwing up my food. I looked at, okay, what are the thoughts that are stimulating? What are the feelings that I was feeling? And it took me a while to see, to not have me judging the fact that I experienced that, and instead say, okay, I'm the thinker of my thoughts, I'm the feeler of my feelings. I am not my thoughts, I am not my feelings, I am not my behavior. I can change my behavior, but I have to change the beliefs that are backing that behavior first. And when you do that, that's when things can shift radically. That's when you shift your identity. That's why I don't walk around saying, like, I had an eating disorder. Like, I'm like, I am transformed. Like, the thought of throwing up, I'm like, I don't know how I did that for 10 years. Like, I don't, like, I literally, it's like a totally different person.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you become self-aware of the beliefs?
Noticing and questioning when you aren't getting the results that you want from the perspective of the anthropologist, not from the judger. So, for example, an anthropologist, when they're studying human behavior, they're looking at a human not from the lens of, oh, that person's a nasty person or a bad person or for doing whatever it is that they're doing. They're like, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
That's interesting that happened. We can apply the same strategy to our own awareness. When you're not getting the results that you want in whatever area it is that you want, that you are looking to get new results in, when you're not getting results, you're not happy with the external circumstances, that's where you can say, isn't that interesting? Because that question, it automatically takes away any power that judgment could have of like, I must be so bad, or that I don't deserve, all those nasty, crappy thoughts.
Right.
Rather than saying, isn't that interesting? Let me study. What was the trigger? What was the belief? What was the thing that maybe led to that? Because maybe if you can dial it back to the thoughts or the emotions that led to that, then that will give you some insight as to what is the belief that's behind those thoughts and emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if you could summarize how to change, a habit, really not going deep, the first step would be being able to be aware and kind of go, like you said, from a point of view of no judgment.
Self-awareness. And normally the thing is that it's at first, because there are 4 stages of like competency to learning.
Mm-hmm.
The first stage, it's going to be as you become self-aware of your thoughts and of your feelings and of your habits, it's going to be uncomfortable, because more often than not, you're going to recognize them after you do them.
Mm.
And sometimes there can be guilt and shame around that. Whereas if you have a process for forgiveness, for allowing yourself to forgive yourself for that action, for saying I was doing the best that I can with the resources that I had available, and then allowing for that unconscious or that conscious incompetence, because that's the second stage. The first stage is you're totally unconscious, you're totally incompetent, you're not aware at all of who you are, what you're doing. But the second stage is the messy stage. It's the learning stage. It's what I call the toddling stage. Like as a toddler, like you see them, they toddle, they realize they made a mistake because they fall on their butt, and then they pick themselves back up. They don't do it from a place of judgment. They do it from a place of, oh, okay, that's all right. I'll try it again.
Right.
And it's allowing yourself to have those, giving yourself the permission to have that, go through that stage of conscious incompetence where you're recognizing the habit or the behavior after you've already done it, and then you can work backwards rather than it being this judgmental nightmare.
Because we do that. We do judge ourselves quite a bit. And, it's interesting. Like, I love that when you talk about that and you're very honest and you're, people can learn so much more about you and your background. And, again, eating disorder background similarities that we have. And it's funny because in the process of trying to change a habit, you will fall. But like you said, like forgiving yourself and understanding that you can get back up and you can keep going. Like that's we beat ourselves up so much.
Absolutely.
Right?
And sometimes it also goes to like when you want to create a new habit. Like let's say you know that you would like to like going to the gym. You would like to like going to the gym, but you don't yet like it. So in order to create the habit, it's not about falling in love with necessarily the habit of going to the gym. It's falling in love with the results.
Exactly.
Of looking at what are the results that these habits are giving. So if you look at the results that you have in whatever area of your life and you're not 100% happy with it, then you can shift the results by shifting, like, what are the results that I would like to have? What is it that I actually want? It's the simplest question that I ask my clients, and 95% of the time, every time I ask, what is it that you want? Everyone will give me a list of at least 10 things that they don't want.
Right.
Which is great, except for your unconscious mind does not process negatives.
Yeah.
And so if I say, don't think about chocolate, what are you thinking about? Like,
chocolate.
I'm not going to chocolate, maybe a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the thing is like when you focus on what it is that you don't want, you're going to end up manifesting more of that in your life because I always say that your subconscious mind is the goal setter and your unconscious mind or your subconscious mind is the goal getter. And so that seeks out and it's going to find those things to back up that thing. And since it doesn't process negatives, if you're telling it to go find something that you don't want it to find, it's going to find more reasons, more things to latch on.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Absolutely. And on that subject, I think one of the most successful things that I have done, because I'm a nutritionist, but I'm also a fitness trainer. One of the most successful things, and it's insane, is I have told my clients, don't think about tomorrow. Just leave your gym clothes right next to your bed with some shoes. They're like, okay. Anyways, they get up, and so they see this, and they're like, well, I might as well. They're right here. Not that much work. They go, and then when they're done, they feel good because the endorphins are overpowering you, right? You do that, and all of a sudden, you see the clothes on your sofa, your fitness clothes, and you're not thinking about anything but how you're going to feel afterwards, the reward. And so, like, once you start craving the reward, it's game over.
Right,
you're
right.
hooked.
Yeah.
You're hooked.
And it takes your body a while. Like some people, like thankfully I had enough education and fitness when I was younger. Like when you get on a stair climber, it takes 20 minutes for your body to even register. So it's like, and it's like, it's definitely that feeling of walking out of there. I will say this, I hate getting to the gym sometimes, but I never regret what I feel when I leave.
Exactly.
And so it's that brain programming, like you said. You have offered so much value. We didn't even get to do our rapid fire because you just were amazing.
Oh,
And I'm so glad that we did. We'll have to bring, you know what that means? We're going to have to bring you on
have to
again.
bring you back.
It just means part 2.
Yeah, please tell everyone where they can find you, your Instagram name and your website.
Yeah, you can find me at crownyourself.com if you want to download a hypnosis that is totally going to step you into a next level of self-worth and of loving who you are. go to crownyourself.com. A little pop-up will pop up. You can download a hypnosis right there for you. And you can follow me and find me on Instagram at kimberly.spencer. And you can follow my company at Crown Yourself Now if you want some cheeky, inspirational, sassy quotes that'll kick you in the pants.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being unsugarcoated with us.
Thank you so
audience.
much, Kimberly.
Thank you,
you
audience,
so
for letting
much.
us be unsugarcoated with you. And we'll see you next time. Take care, guys. Bye.
You've been listening to the Unsugarcoated Podcast with your hosts, Ali Alanias and Alexandra Checa.